So good afternoon. Can everyone hear me?
Yes,
Oh, is that Mosavir? Mosavir, is that how you pronounce your name?
yes, it must have been Delvi Sadiq.
Excellent. Right, so can you also see me?
Yes, I can see you.
Lovely. Well, welcome to you all. My name's Olga Astaniotis. A very quick synopsis of my experience before we start. I've worked in and around enterprise and startup for 20 years or so, helped hundreds of businesses raise money for their growing and new businesses. And I specialize in food, drink, hospitality, designer maker products, businesses that sell into retail, and I've run a few of my own businesses in that time as well. So what I hope to achieve today is to give you some tools and tips about writing an effective business plan. Um, to give you a better ability to assess your own plan from the perspective of the reader, so that you're able to represent your business from an elevated and external position rather than the internal operational perspective, which tends to dominate our thoughts on a day-to-day basis. So if you already run your own business, I know how difficult it is to just step outside of that for a moment and try and put things down on paper that make sense to somebody that doesn't know your business the way that you do. And if you're just starting, then actually that blank piece of paper can be very daunting. So let's just look at the next hour and what I hope to cover. So today we're going to look at the thought process of writing your plan rather than the content of the detail itself. There's loads of guidance and information online, which I'm sure you've already discovered, and it would take much more than an hour to take you through the actual busy content of a plan. So today we're going to look at writing from the perspective of the reader, visualizing your priorities for your business, deciding how much information is enough, and trying to represent your business plan on a single page. So firstly, we're going to look at your objectives and how you go about making sure that you're really clear about what you want to get out of the plan. We'll discuss how this affects the content and the emphasis. We'll look at the audience and how you can put yourself in their shoes. And finally, I'm going to introduce you to something called the business model canvas, very, very briefly. It's a useful tool for all sorts of planning processes, and it's just to give you a little bit of an insight, and you might find that it's useful for you. Okay? And in particular, we're going to think about how you go about sharing your priorities, direction, and critical success measures effectively in this business plan. So let me just find out, please, if I can, from you, what it is that you're writing your business plan for. Can I ask Jennifer first, please?
Yes. So I work for the Philharmonia Orchestra. We're a charity, but we have a number of digital resources that we are interested in exploiting commercially. So we're going to be applying for social investment in order to be able to move forward that trading arm of our business. So I'm
Okay.
just interested in the basics of how to put together a business plan with a view to most effectively being able to apply for social investment to commercialise those aspects of our business which we can generate income from.
Okay, lovely. And who do you think will be reading the plan? Who's it for?
Um, well, primarily it probably will be for Nesta and their Arts Impact Fund. So yeah, that's primarily who will be reading it in the first instance.
Lovely, thank you.
Okay.
Hello, Isabella. Can you hear me, Isabella?
Yes, I am. I am here.
Hi, Isabella.
I had some
Welcome. I'm just very quickly trying to get an understanding of why you've come here today and what the business plan is for. Why are you writing a business plan, Isabella?
because I'm attending a course, a master course, and I have a module about business strategies
Okay, lovely, thank
in
you.
the art organization. So they asked me to do it, a business plan. It could be hypothetical or just something more concrete. It depends on my idea. But I didn't know. I did not understood really what is a business plan and how I can do it.
Okay, thank you. Hello, Margarita. Are you there, Margarita?
Yeah. Okay.
Hi. Do you want to tell us a little bit about why you need to write a business plan? I can't hear you, Margarita. I'll come back to you. Mosavir?
Yes,
Hi. Why are you writing a business plan today?
I have two, three objectives. So basically, my business plan is for art dealers, art galleries, and art collectors. But I was taking advice with somebody, some kind of business counselor, and he suggested me or advised me I should apply first for art council grant. It will help me to start some broadcasting, then I can go further.
Okay, lovely. So you're applying mostly for grant funding, yes?
First, I might do that.
Margarita, can we hear you now? Do you want to try again? No, I can't hear you, Margarita. Okay, there you are. Just writing it, just starting a small business. Okay, lovely. I've got that. Thank you very much. It just gives me an insight into what it is you're trying to achieve. So the first thing we're going to look at is your objectives. And actually, the thing about writing the plan is that there's lots of ideas in your head. I know I can visualize what's going on in there. And it's important that you have very clear objectives about why you're doing this, so that you can tell the reader the right things. And one thing to think about is, why are you writing the plan? What specific outcomes do you want to achieve? What time period does the plan represent? And what format does the plan need to take? So you might be wanting to use this plan to support applications for grant funding, for example. You might need it to raise money from a bank or for equity investment. And it's very important that you're very clear about your objectives so that you don't get carried away in the writing of the plan and end up with 30 to 40 pages that really is very, very difficult to read. And so there will be differences in the way that you write your plan depending on what you're trying to get out of it. And we'll go through a little bit more detail. So being very clear about your objectives is important because it needs to be written specifically for you and what you're trying to achieve. And I know from previous experience where I've looked at other people's plans, thought they read well, used them as a guide, and then just found that they haven't worked for me in the end because I was unclear about my own personal objectives. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And think about the time period that this plan represents. So, for example, if you've been asked for 2 or 3 years worth of cash flow forecasts and finances, then you need to write about your intentions over that time period. So by year 2 or 3, there doesn't need to be in-depth analysis of what you will do, but you must give the reader sufficient information to know that the numbers that you represent stack up. So think about the time period that you realistically want this plan to represent. And let's not forget that a business plan is looking into the future. And so we can't predict that future, all we can do is forecast. So it's about making the numbers in the plan supported by the text and the content that you provide over a time scale, a time frame that makes sense, that is reasonable and logical. So do think about what that time period is and why you've chosen to write your plan over a 12-month or 24-month or 36-month period. It would be very unusual to see a plan that goes anywhere beyond 3 years, and I think for most of us, we're probably writing a business plan that represents about 24 months in time, with quite a lot of financial detail, certainly for the first 12 to 18 months, okay? And as far as the format is concerned, of course there's going to be a written element to it, but if your product or service or project is very visual, then also think about how you will express that and how will you make that come to life in terms of the format of the plan, and whether or not you need to support it with other visual or oral or other formats that will make up the whole plan. It doesn't all have to be just written down on paper. So the objective of your plan should be your starting point, and you have to have them to hand throughout the entire process, because they really will help you focus and make sure that at all times you are writing things that are relevant and make sense to you achieving those objectives. Secondly, I really want you to think very carefully about your audience. Is your plan written for an investor? Is it for staff or a management team? Maybe for a board of trustees or directors? Is it for a collaborative venture? Are you writing for an arts council or a trust fund, or for a crowdfunding campaign? Each of these audiences will have different priorities and will be looking for certain information. So think about who will be reading this plan, who do I want to affect or persuade or influence? Maybe there's more than one person that will make decisions. What actions do I want the reader to take after they have read the plan? What do you think might be their top 3 priorities in taking the action that you want them to take? How do they make those decisions? How long do they need to make those decisions? And what other information will they need to accompany the plan? Now, it's really important that you know your audience really well. So, for example, if you're applying to a certain body, a trust fund, for a grant, for example, or to a bank, then make sure that you've researched them well and you understand what it is they're trying to achieve with their funding. So as somebody who's read hundreds of plans, there's nothing worse than losing interest 3 or 4 pages in, not being given the pertinent information that will help me make a decision in your favour, and feeling like the writer just didn't take the time to understand what I needed to know. And for most of these audiences, the investment decision is not just about the money. There's a little bit more to it than that. So that decision to donate or to give to a crowdfunding campaign or to approve a grant application is rarely just about the money. It can be very much about how they connect with you and your business. So just think carefully about your audience and what you think they need to know from you. So knowing your objective and understanding your audience will help you make a better informed decision about the level of detail that's required in each of the chapters of your business plan. This is just a typical content and flow of maybe a startup business plan. And obviously for those of you that are working with not-for-profits or applying for grant funding, there will be elements in the plan that are not included here. But this is a typical flow of a plan in terms of what the reader might want to look at. And once you are clear about your objectives and you have taken the time to understand your audience, you'll be much more confident about what you include and what you exclude when you are writing your plan. And sometimes what you leave out is equally important, because you don't want to crowd the reader's mind with lots and lots of information that they can't make sense of. So once you have those objectives in place, be very clear that everything that you write supports what you're trying to achieve and gives the reader information that they've not yet had. Conversely, it's really difficult to just write and write and write, because you're so passionate about what you do sometimes, and you're so excited about the opportunities you see ahead, that you go too far. And so understanding the audience and using some kind of content and flow of this sort of order will help you just pull back a bit and not get overexcited about what you're saying. I would suggest that 10 pages is probably just about enough information. It's quite difficult, if you're not an experienced writer of business plans, to get all the information you need into 10 pages. 30 pages is far too much, certainly for people who are reading a lot of plans and applications. So 15 is probably about the right kind of length that you're looking for to be able to say the things that you want to say in this sort of chapter, in these sorts of chapters in a business plan. Yes, everybody with me?
That's really helpful. Thank you. Yeah, it's great.
Yes.
Okay. Let's just look at some emphasis and tone now. With a bank loan, the decision maker is not always human. It might surprise you to know that, but often it's a lot of number crunching that takes place with a bank loan application. So you can afford to be succinct and more matter of fact. You're also not competing with other businesses for the bank's money. Essentially, it's not infinite, but the sorts of sums that you'll be applying for, the bank has endless reserves, and so you're not directly competing with other businesses. It's a formal process with the bank loan. The numbers are really important. Conversely, with an equity investor, the executive summary is paramount. It sets the scene and often makes a first impression that is immovable in the rest of the plan. It's a little bit like going for an interview, and we're told that we make a significant impression in the first few seconds when we walk in through the door. The executive summary of your business plan to an equity investor is very, very important. Also, your plan for an equity investor would be a combination of formality and informality. And these two need to be well balanced, and this is why you need to know your audience. Because they're not just buying into the business and the investment opportunity, they're also buying into you. And personality matters an awful lot. The other thing to bear in mind is you are competing with other organisations, with other businesses for their money. With trustees and funding bodies, again, this is probably less formal than with the bank loan and the equity investor. And you need to show real synergy with their programme objectives. They need to be able to read your application and feel that yours is an organisation that has very similar outlook and ideals as they do. Their literature and their website will give you clues as to their personality, also whether they want a formal or informal approach, whether they're aloof, whether they're friendly. All of these things will help you when you're deciding the emphasis and tone of your business plan and application. It's a little bit like, again, what we're told in an interview, where we're told to mirror the other person's body language. And so with equity investors and funding bodies, they want to feel that they're on the same level as you and that you have really understood them. So there's less formality in a business plan that you would present to a funding body. And then even if we look at something like crowdfunding, which most of you won't be ready for yet, but certainly some of you might be in the near future, it's very informal. You need to capture the imagination. Crowdfunding campaigns tend to be quite colourful, fun and alive, full of personality, and you are so very, very important. The people are everything in a crowdfunding campaign. So when you think about the emphasis and the tone of the content of what you're writing, think about what each of these and how much of it needs to be formal and how much of it needs to be informal. And when you read your plan after you've written it or while you're reading it, be confident that your personality is coming across. Don't use anyone else's language but yours, because you have to feel comfortable that if you're asked anything about the plan, you can talk eloquently and you can sound exactly the way you sound to the reader when they're reading your plan, because this, after all, is your business plan about your business. So the audience you're speaking to and their method of assessing your plan should very much dictate which of these approaches you take. Any questions at this point?
No, not for me.
Okay, lovely. I just want to, I know it sounds like a silly question, what does the business plan represent? But I want to make some points here, because a business plan is, to me, made up of two distinct elements. There's the mechanics of the plan, the business side of it, how it operates, what it produces, how it makes money, how it spends its funding. And secondly, there's the people behind it. What motivates your organisation to actually exist in the first place, what the business or your organisation represents, and these are two quite distinct elements of the plan, because one's quite factual. How do you spend your money? What resources do you use? What do you achieve in doing that? How do you meet needs? And the other is a little bit less tangible. And really you need to represent these two equally. So just looking at that, there's the bit, when I showed you earlier, that circle of content for your plan, that really is the detail. The envisioned future. You are essentially telling a story about what your organisation will look like at some point in the future, with your specific and audacious goals and your vivid description of how they will be achieved. This half of the plan is about demonstrating the viability of the proposition that you're putting forward and the ability of you and the management team to actually deliver that. And most of us would probably recognise that this is what a business plan is all about. It's the how, when, where, who of how this organisation will operate. Whether you want to call it a roadmap, It will say, here's our starting point. This is where we are today. If you're a startup, then what you've got is an idea. If you're an established business, then you have already achieved something. And the business plan will tell the reader what the future looks like and how you will get there. So you need to give the reader sufficient information to demonstrate this viability. But beyond the mechanics, each business has a personality and a culture of its own. And this is of equal importance. Sometimes it's called the vision or the mission. It's what you're really about. Your ethics, your business ideals and morals, the driving ambitions that make you get up in the morning and run this business idea or this organization. If yours is a relatively small organization, then I don't really like to talk about vision and mission. I mean, I couldn't probably even properly define to you what those things mean. And I think it's just a bit of a time-consuming sideshow for small organizations like ours. And it can come across very contrived if you start using these sorts of headings such as vision and mission and trying to make sense of it all. But articulating what the management team and what you, the owner, are all about and what your business stands for is very important, because when someone reads your plan, they need to come away understanding your core values and purpose. And there's no right or wrong to this, because it's personal to you and your organization or you and your business. And your core values and ideology, whatever you want to call it, will evolve over time, but the essence of what you do will always be a constant. So let's just think about why this is important. A well-defined purpose helps you connect with people on a subconscious level that's beyond the mechanics of whether or not you make money, whether or not you do good, whether or not you positively influence people in the world. And because this element of your business connects more emotionally with the reader, if done sincerely, then your values and core purpose will give the business character and individuality. And this is what captures the imagination. This is what brings your business to life, to the reader. And it's an important part of the effort to be different and likable, because when you are competing for funding, you've got to stand out more than just how you will use the funding and what impact you will make. And even for a bank loan, if you and your business model are synchronized, your application for funding and your business plan become more believable. And you give the strong impression that the owners of the business are highly committed to this organization because they believe in it. And when you're writing the plan, to inspire you, look at what other people, similar organizations to you, write about their businesses and their organizations, and see how you connect with it. Think about organizations that are in the news for good or bad reasons, and think about how their core purpose makes you feel, and how you as a consumer or a user of services actually makes those decisions, and how you choose to relate to what you believe to be the core purpose of those organizations. The other thing about having your core purpose well defined is it helps you stay focused, not just at the point at which you're writing your plan, but throughout the whole decision-making process when you are trying to develop and run your organization. Because decisions made through the prism of your core values are more likely to achieve the results that are right for you. And I'm not talking about ethereal, mystical visions. I'm talking about having absolute clarity as to what your business is about. And let's just look at the practicalities of how you go about defining what this thing, this intangible thing, looks like. So let's say that you want to define what you're doing. And here's a picture of what your business is about. You need to draw a clear line between what is in and what is out. And that way, when you make decisions, you can just check whether it meets your core purpose, values, and objectives, or it doesn't meet them. And let's say that you manage to summarize that in a single line, building a something something that is able to deliver such and such faster than so and so and with zero impact on the environment. Now, I know that's a very business focused objective, but it's just an illustration. So that one-liner, that definition that is core to what you do, you can call it your purpose if you want. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter what you call it, but that line is the clear definition. And everyone in your organization knows it and understands it. It shows what you do and what you don't do. And so for the reader of your plan, it provides context for everything they're about to read. And for you and your team, it provides focus about the decisions that you make on a day-to-day basis. So for example, if you intend to have zero impact on the environment, but you can only afford to buy second-hand diesel vans, then you're not staying inside the line. So either your core purpose and your vision is wrong, or the decisions you're making inside the business are possibly knee-jerk and not coming back to your core purpose. So in the rest of the plan, when you talk about the detail, the when, the who, the how much, you can weave this core purpose into everything that you write, and it will make sense to the reader, and it will hang together with credibility, so that you come across as being very, very certain and assured about what it is that your business does. Just to give you some examples, I'll just give you a few minutes to read these, well, as we said, whatever we want to call them. Just take a moment to read them. You can see them on the screen, can't you?
Yes.
Has everyone had a chance to read them?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
Lovely, thank you. So I'm not suggesting that, I mean, obviously these have been developed over a period of time with these organisations, but when you read these introductions from these three different organisations, you immediately get a sense of what they're about, don't you? And so when you read the rest of the plan, you sort of know what's coming, and everything that you're going to be told from this point forward in that business plan, you get a sense that it's going to allude back to this very clear purpose, mission, values that these organisations hold. I mean, the second one from Warby Parker, you immediately get a sense of the personality and their go-getting kinds of people in this business. So just to try and cement that a little bit, I'm going to give you 3 or 4 minutes to just write down some thoughts of your own for your own organisations. If my mic is on, if anybody wants to ask me any questions, but just take a couple of minutes, now that we've just spoken about this core purpose, to make some notes for your own organisations now that it's fresh in your mind. And I will come back to you in 3 minutes.
Hello.
Yeah.
I have to say something.
Yes.
First of all the business have some kind of bumpy road. Not everything is smooth. That is my experience. And all the time I have to ask what is practical and what is possible.
Yes.
That is all the time I'm going to ask. And all the time I'm waiting. And I always found that other people so not honest all the time.
Yes.
They do say that we are helping you, but mostly they are exploiters. In that condition, how anybody could survive
Well, I
as
think
an artist?
yes, and I think, I mean, what we're not going to talk about it today, but that's where your risk analysis for your
Yeah.
organisation is very important. Towards the end, I'm going to speak briefly to you about something called the business model canvas, and part of that is defining the partners in the business. They may not be formal partners, but they are people and organisations whose influence and input is critical to the success of what you're trying to do. And it is important that you choose these partners and organisations very carefully. And for each business, those risks are different. And I think as part of your risk analysis in your plan, there are decisions that you need to make about how much trust, how much responsibility you give to people and organisations outside of your direct control. And then
Yes,
you have to think, well, if those people or those organisations let me down, what are the consequences to me? And how do I manage that? How do I minimise the negative impact to myself? Because all business owners at some point have to take risks, just like
yes,
an investor. And so you
yes.
measure that risk, and if it goes wrong, you need to know what might you do instead.
Yeah, because the same people who are helping, they themselves may be sometime in trouble.
Absolutely. And so, for example, in a pure profit motivated business, when you look at customers, for example, so I've worked with people in the food industry, and they have delivered food and made it and gone to the expense, and then the people that they deliver the product to go out of business and they don't get
Yes,
paid. Now,
yes,
if those organizations are limited companies, you can go to the Companies House website and you can look at some of the information about those organizations. You can pay to get information on their last audited accounts. You can often find quite a bit of information on who they already supply and how reliable they are, sorry, who they already buy from, and how reliable they are in paying their bills. So there are things that you can do as a business to try and mitigate some of these risks, but we can never take the risk away. That's impossible, unfortunately. But I think if you step away from the business from time to time and reevaluate those risks and reevaluate what measures you have in place, if something were to go wrong, you can't do better than that. But that is good management practice. But that's probably all you can do, and a little bit of due diligence about these people, these clients, these suppliers, these organizations that you want to work with.
yeah. I have to shrink in a way to protect myself.
Absolutely, yes. And you know, some things that go wrong will damage your business a little bit, but will not break your business.
Yes,
Well,
I
yeah,
do not feel I'm broken.
yes, well, they are low risk. But other things could go wrong and they could ruin your business, and they are high risk. And so when you're evaluating these risks, it's for you, the business owner, to make decisions about what level of risk you are prepared to take. And we're all quite different in terms of the risk that we are prepared to take. And it depends on so many factors. But if you review those risks on a regular basis, and by regular I mean every 3 to 6 months, then you
Yes.
probably find that there are ways of managing those risks so they don't do too much damage to your organization.
Yes.
Okay?
Especially for a creative person, it is the best way.
Yes. Okay, let's just carry on. Because where are we now? We are at 12:40, so we've got about 20 minutes left. So, oops, that was the wrong button to press. Let me just get you back. There we are. So in summary, your business plan represents these two distinct components, and they are both equally important. I just want to very quickly go through 3 different examples of how your business plan might be assessed by different organizations. So a private equity investor, just as an example, evaluates business opportunities a little bit like this. This is in no particular order necessarily. It's just the next 3 slides are just to give you an idea of how business plans are evaluated in very different ways. So a private equity investor, or maybe even a benefactor for some of you, somebody who's going to donate, think about them as individuals. They're looking for a business model that is demonstrably viable. If they're going to put their money into your organization, they want to know that your whole business model is actually viable. They want to see that there is a market for sustained growth or demand. For those of you that are not-for-profits, there will be slightly different terminology. How easy is it for others to enter the market or replicate the service or the good that you do? If you're one of hundreds, then you might be a less attractive investment. If there are only 1 or 2 organizations doing what you do, or there's no one that does it exactly the way you do it, or in the town that you do it, then it's easier to stand out. Do you, the management, have the ability to exploit the potential that you've talked about? Are you bringing in new talent? That if you yourselves lack the skills, the experience, or the capability to achieve the full potential of what you're writing in the business plan? Does the potential reward to this investor justify the risk? Is the return on investment, is their financial investment meeting their investment criteria? So if yours is a private business and you're looking for equity investment, for example, then there's something called the Enterprise Investment Scheme, which gives the investor tax breaks. So they might need all of the investment decisions they make to be EIS compliant, and you need to know these things. And is there an appropriate fit with existing investments or other projects that they fund? Often a funder wants to see a little bit of diversity in their portfolio, and they don't want to see a conflict of interest. They don't want to see that by your business succeeding, you may be having a detrimental effect on another investment or another organization that they fund. So when you're researching your audience, you can look out for some of these clues. A bank will look at it slightly differently. First and foremost, does the business or the individual meet the lending criteria, and is there sufficient security? It's very black and white with a bank. It's about a low-risk lending decision. Can you, the borrower, afford the loan if the business doesn't quite go to plan, or even worse, if the business fails? The bank will be looking at the risks that your organization faces, whether or not there's commercial viability and growth potential, and also whether there is track record. So what evidence is there to suggest that the forecasts you're making are achievable, and is the business low risk? A bank is very much in the game of low risk, whereas an equity investor will view risk in a very different way. And a trust or a funder, again, a very different way of looking at things. Do the beneficiary outcomes meet their priorities? Does the applicant organisation meet the technical requirements? For example, some funding you apply for will need to be matched. Sometimes they don't want their funding to represent more than a certain percentage of your total revenue. And also often a not-for-profit might be excluded from applying, or if you're not a charity, you might be excluded from applying. So there will be very specific technical requirements that you need to know about before you submit your applications and your plans. Does the track record of the applicant suggest that that you can meet the criteria and that the risks are low? Do the impacts and outcomes offer value for money? And are you doing something better or different that meets with their beneficiary outcomes and priorities? So when you're writing your plan, make sure you know these things before you start, because there's actually nothing worse than a funding application that says, please answer these questions, please address these priorities, and you read through 15, 20, 30 pages and the information just isn't there. So this will be readily available somewhere in their, either on their website or in their funding criteria or in their literature. So do your research. I'm not going to go through this now, but it's here just for a little bit of guidance. So even though I've called it an equity investment plan content and emphasis, some of it will be quite relevant to whatever kinds of plans you are writing. And just a few other pointers. Keep it as short as possible, make sure it flows, and try not to repeat yourselves. This is where, excuse me, this is where you need to write, go away, come back and read it again, and be very tough with yourself in terms of whether or not it flows. Vary the content so there's interest for the reader. Use colour, graphs, images, whatever you feel comfortable with to get the point across. Use supporting resources, and especially make sure that your website and your social media, if you use them, actually walk the talk of the business plan. It would be very rare that your online presence is not scrutinized as part of assessing a business application that you submit. And use appendices. Put lengthy data and information and analysis into the appendices so that the main plan flows. A classic example of where people go wrong with this is in their market research. So they give pages and pages of data and analysis and research that proves that there's a market. Now, I don't need to read all of that necessarily, and by the time I've read it, I've lost my train of thought in the plan. So put it into an appendix and summarize it briefly in the main body of the plan. And please, I know it sounds really simple, but formatting. The number of times I'm trying to read a plan and a table or an image throws it so that the numbers don't line up and the bullet points are skewed. So do look at your formatting, and you might find that it's best if you convert your written document to a PDF so that all the formatting is fixed and the reader, like me sometimes, doesn't press the wrong button and it creates tabs where it shouldn't. I've done that before and then not been able to put it back together again. So any questions at this point?
No, that's clear for me.
Great.
Yeah, it's fine for me.
Lovely, thank you. So in the final 10 minutes or so, I'm just going to introduce you to something that you might find of value. It's called the Business Model Canvas. Can you see my cursor My little arrow. Yes, okay. So I do this on a really big piece of paper, like A3 and bigger. And as you can see, it's split into 1/3 at the bottom, 2/3 at the top, and 5 columns. This is the starting point here. What you do, you're sometimes called value proposition. The second important thing is your customers, who they are, your primary target audience, the reason why the person to whom you do what you do, whether it's to sell a service or produce a product. So number one is what you do, number two, your customers, and then everything else fits around that. How you interact with them, your distribution channels, how you get to them, the key activities of what you do, the resources you use, the key partners, more severe, would go here, how you make your money, how you generate revenues or income, and what it costs you to run this organization. The entire business, in a really easy to absorb format, can be represented on this one page. And actually, if yours is a not-for-profit organization, there is something called the business model social canvas or something like that. So it's got slightly different tables because here, for example, you've got funding sources rather than revenue streams, and your customer relations here will include funders as well as the consumers of the product or service. And what I like about this particular model is that on this single page, it can represent what you do right now. It can be used to represent the journey of where you're trying to get to. So because your business plan is going to say in 2 years' time, in 3 years' time, this is where we want to be, this is how we will achieve it, this is the funding we're applying for, what this one page can represent is that journey. So we're going to go from working with, for example, working with troubled adults here to extending our reach to adults and young people. We're going to sell our product to high net worth individuals, but at the moment we don't interact with that target audience. So it can represent the journey that you're trying to make. It can also be done as a strategic exercise for different departments in your organization if you're that big. So if you worked in a large organization, each key department, this might look slightly different. So it can be used in slightly different ways. It can also be used for you to compare yourself to your main competition. So what does your value proposition look like compared to your competitors? What are your cost structures and profit margins compared to your competitors? Why do your competitors have 50,000 followers on Instagram and you only have 3,000? It can really help you map on the single page where you have strengths and weaknesses compared to other organizations that you feel you compete with. And it's also really useful as a template for new ideas. So stripping away everything that you do at the moment, if you're looking to do something different that doesn't currently happen in your organization, this is quite a good tool to brainstorm what you would need to do and what it would look like if that new idea were actually in place and operational. And there are lots of different examples of this online so that you can go into it in more detail and teach yourself, really. I mean, you could go on a course if you wanted to, but I think it's fairly self-explanatory. So I've given you 3 different models there that give you some hints and prompts if you find this particular tool useful. And finally, I hate the fact that it's called a value proposition canvas. Forget that. but just looking at your business through your product and services and your customers' needs is another useful one-page way to just focus on your mind on especially the benefits, the features, and the experience of for the customer or for the beneficiary of using your product or service. And just by representing this on one page, you might find, especially if your brain works visually rather than in lists and writing, that you can better represent your products, your services, and your customers like this, and then it's easier for you to write those things down in the business plan itself. So they're just a couple of tools, really, if you find that sort of thing useful. And if you find that you want to go into more detail on something like this, I'm sure the Creative Industry Finance Programme will be able to put on another webinar for it. So that's me for this hour, which is nearly over. I hope some of that has sort of sunk in. I know it's very difficult to listen to me speaking and concentrating for that length of time. But are there any questions? Is there anything you want me to go back to briefly, or anything else anyone wants to say?
No, I found that really useful. Thank you.
Is that Jennifer?
Yes.
Thank you, Jennifer. Just remind me, let's just see again. So yours was the Nesta application, yes?
Potentially, yeah. We're not there yet. We're not ready, but we're at the first point of beginning to explore that seriously. Yes.
And what was the name of your orchestra?
It's the Philharmonia Orchestra.
Philharmonia. And where do you play?
We're resident in London and 6 other centres across the UK, primarily London.
And do you play?
No, I'm on the administration.
Ah, okay, excellent. Are you at the South Bank a lot, or is that the Philharmonia?
Yeah, we're resident at the South Bank Centre, that's right.
Yes. So yes, I've listened to them a few times. I have a friend who plays the viola.
Oh, really?
Yes, so I've been there a few times and listened to Mahler's. But thank you for joining me today. Anybody else have anything to say?
I just like to say something.
Yes.
Can I? I just feel there are always some stages, and if first stage is not correct or perfect, I could not go on the second stage or third stage. I am still struggling on the first stage.
What is the first stage that you're talking about?
Yes, like I am a sculptor, so I am producing work. Second stage is the bronze casting, and third stage is to go to market.
Yes, so this is the process you're talking
Yes.
about. So
Yeah.
are you stuck on the product on the manufacturing side, or
Yes.
okay. Well, I can't help you with that, I'm afraid, because I don't know how you do what you do. But where did you learn? There must be resources and places you can go to perfect.
No, I don't need to learn. I can produce. There is no problem.
Yeah.
So it is the second stage and the third stage always a problem. First stage I can control myself. I am qualified, experienced, and I was successful.
And so, are there other people that do things that are similar to you that are successful and have got past those other stages?
Yes, there are peoples. Yes, they are successful.
And can you delve a little deeper into how they have gone about finding that success and overcoming the hurdles that you're currently facing? Because you're not alone. Other people have already.
Yes, everybody face a financial problem.
Yes.
So the financial is the key, and somewhere some people are very lucky. As I feel myself, for 10 years I was very lucky. I had enough money to explore, and broadcasting money I could able to pay by myself without any funding or without anybody. I was selling very well.
And what must
So
be,
that was.
do you go to exhibit?
Yes, I was organizing exhibition with the gallery help.
And do you have social media?
I had, but there was not so much need that particular time, I was just showing in a gallery. So they were doing their own publicity by themselves. But now, as I am self-employed, so I have a web page and I am trying by myself without gallery help.
I mean, I find that for artists who are they have the creative talent, but maybe not the business opportunity is not so well defined, that collaboration and building an audience on social media can be very, very valuable.
Yes.
Building that audience and that following on social media does take time. And the starting point usually is you going out there and following other people and starting online conversations via social media. And we're actually quite polite on social media. If someone follows us, we tend to follow back. If somebody reposts our picture, we tend to post one of theirs. So your own activity on social media will actually generate follows and interest in return. And it's worth persevering with that and following journalists and editors and other people who are influential in the art world. You'd be surprised how quickly that can escalate.
Yes, I think it worked. I agree with you.
Well, listen, all of you, thank you so much for your time. Best of luck. If you have any other questions or issues, I'm sure you can put those through to the Creative Industry Finance team, and we can get back to you in some other way. But I wish you all the very, very best of luck.
Thank you very much. It is very helpful.
Thank you, Mosavir. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.